Good morning. Guten Morgen. Ohayou gozaimasu. That's good. Now, this is one I don't know. Chun achinyel. Is that just about right? Korean? Bonjour, ni hao, buongiorno, salam. Welcome, everybody, to World Languages Day. That's about the extent of my language skills, so hopefully they're right. Hola! Oh my God! How could I possibly forget Spanish, right? What a shame, what a shame. All right, well, welcome everybody to World Languages Day 2023, the first one live and face-to-face in 4 years since before the pandemic. So, we're super excited to have you all here. Before we get started, just a couple of logistics. Do you all know your rotation? Like, where are you going after this? Good. So, if you're going to Veterans Memorial Hall for the performances, there are 2 double doors behind that wall. Please go out that way. If you're going to the exhibitor hall, you go out the way you came in, but please stay on the right, because we're going to have other people, otherwise it's going to be somewhat of a traffic jam in there. And the way this is going to work today is we're going to start just with a couple of questions to our illustrious panel, just to get warmed up. And during that time, we want to give you, and throughout the entire event, we want to give you the opportunity to ask questions. The way we're going to do that is we have some volunteers, and they have little note cards and pens. So if you have a question, please wave at one of them. They will hand you a pen and a note card. Write your first name, school, and your question on the note card, and then pass it to them. I'm going to collect those so I can combine some of the questions, so we want to avoid asking the same question several times. And then I'll ask our panel to answer those questions for you. How does that sound? Sound good? All right, very good. Well, we're going to get started. So my name is Tim Jansa. I am with CULTR, obviously, I guess. And I'm currently working as the International Higher Education Consultant. And I'm going to introduce our panel just by name. I'm not going to read any bios. I'm not going to bore you to death because I want them to talk a little bit about themselves. So we have Darrah DeVane on the end. I'm going to start there. She is a master's student in the Department of Applied Linguistics and ESL. Then we're going to, yeah, let's see, good. Then we're going to have Mr. Marquis Daly. He's a marketing consultant at the Japan-America Society of Georgia. Then we have Ms. Erika Denman. She is a volunteer coordinator at the International Rescue Committee, IRC. And then we have the esteemed Aiyana Matthews, right here to my right. Apparently you know her, that's great. She's the president of Gardner-Mathews Global Management. So, all right. So again, remember, I'm going to ask a few questions. If you have a question, raise your hand, collect a card, hand the card back, you can keep the pen. How's that? Get a pen. All right. So, let's get started with just an orientation question. Since we're here for World Languages Day, I would love to hear, and I'm sure the audience would too, a little bit about your language learning journey. How did you get started with a language? And then how has it impacted your life, your career, personally, professionally, and so you're here today. All right, let's get started. Darrah, why don't we just go down that way?
Hello, can you hear me? Awesome. Okay, as Tim just introduced us, my name is Darrah DeVane. I am a master's student here at Georgia State University, studying applied linguistics and ESL. So my second language, what I would consider my second language, is Korean. I started studying Korean in my sophomore year at Emory during my undergraduate career there. And so I started with just normal 101 Korean language classes from there. And then between my junior and senior years there, I studied abroad in Seoul at Yonsei University. And then for the past 2 years before coming back and starting my master's, I lived in Seoul and taught English there. So what was the other part of the question?
How's it impact?
Oh, yes. So Learning Korean specifically has impacted my career tremendously. So I would say that teaching at where I taught, it's called a hagwon or a private academy there. Opened so many opportunities because I was one of only a few teachers there that spoke Korean. Most of the foreigner teachers from America, Canada, maybe from Australia as well, didn't know as much Korean. So I kind of became the liaison between the Korean teachers and the foreigner teachers at the school. And that was a really great opportunity. And I also did things like helping the new incoming foreign teachers open up their bank accounts or get phone plans settled, and that just skyrocketed my Korean proficiency as well. So yeah.
Very good. All right. I love the way you just love to applaud. That's fantastic. It makes me happy. All right, Marquis.
Hello. Okay, just to make sure I was on. I'm Marquis, as mentioned earlier. I may be dating myself when I start, or at least to speak about my language journey. There was a weird time where YouTube wasn't owned by Google. At that time, there were various variety shows in Japanese that I saw. I was enamored, and unfortunately, I wasn't one of those people that saw anime and was like, "Oh, I have to learn Japanese," because at that time there was a lot of subtitles available online. But I saw these variety shows, and if you're not familiar with what Japanese variety shows are, in a nutshell, they're fast paced. There's usually some sort of shock value, and unless you understand the language, it's not going to make sense to you. I found myself at Georgia State, and I found out that they offer Japanese, and so I started taking classes. From there, I started to get involved in having internships with the Japan American Society of Georgia, volunteering with Japanese students incoming, and then I went on a study abroad through Georgia State at Silk University, where I did study more. I actually worked there tutoring Japanese students. Came back, got to meet Tim. So, through some of my language studies, I was able to not only expand my mind, but the opportunity to experience a different culture. As somebody who has an undergrad in psychology, that was phenomenal, and I really got to take some of these practices outside the classroom and really learn them on a one-to-one level. Outside of that, part of that internship, part of these connections that I got to make, I'm still working with the society, and I think that's a good place to stop. I think.
Very good. And yes, so he was at Soka University, about an hour west of Tokyo. And back in 2019, I happened to be in the area and visited Soka, and that's how he and I met. So glad you're here.
Maybe? Okay. Um, so I started my language journey really with my family. Although we are not French, a lot of my family members speak French. So I started taking it in high school, and I took some time between high school and college, and I really, really understood French was what I wanted to major in. French was what I wanted to learn. And as I got older, I learned more and more about how many people around the world speak French, and it's not just French people over in Europe. So this is kind of why I chose Georgia State. Georgia State has a very noticeable emphasis on human rights, and I really appreciated the approach that Georgia State takes to French language. Letting us learn about, yeah, sure, I've learned about some European authors and history, of course, but learning about Haiti and Algeria and Mali. And then I started an internship. So I majored in French, but then did my minor in political science. So I got an internship at the International Rescue Committee here in Atlanta. And I worked with career development. And I knew that in that space, there are plenty of refugees who do speak French. And I immediately got to start using my French and connecting with clients on a deeper level than just English. Even if it's not someone's first language, it's typically going to be a language that's closer than English. English is typically the last language that our clients have learned. And so having that linguistic capacity and being able to connect with people in a language that's more comfortable and easy for them to speak has really helped with my career and even being able to connect with my colleagues who are French speakers as well.
Yeah, there's that old saying that you've probably heard: if you speak to somebody in a language they know, you speak to you speak to their head, but if you speak to them in their language, you speak to their heart, right? And what's also remarkable, I think, with, French is usually considered such a European language, yeah, but it's spoken all over the world. And there's a lot of history with colonialism and so forth. So there are many layers to that. So thank you for bringing that up. All right, Aiyana.
One. So my language journey is really interesting because my first second language is actually Espanol. I graduated top of my class right here in Atlanta, Georgia. I was #2 in the state of Georgia in competition for a program called the Governor's Honors Program that's hosted out of Valdosta State. Yay, that's what's up. I see y'all. I see you. Yes. So like you, we were required to take 2 years of a foreign language, so I elected to take Spanish. I've been introduced to the language and culture through my father, who owned 2 companies and worked a lot with the Hispanic population here in Atlanta, so I was very familiar with that. When I graduated from high school, which was Benjamin Elijah Mays, by the way, from the magnet program of the Academy of Mathematics and Science. My Spanish teacher at the time recommended that I enroll into Iowa State University and major in applied linguistics. That was more foreign to me than actually taking Spanish. So I was like, what is that? How am I going to get a job? I don't even understand what that means. So, but I did decide to continue on to study Spanish and Latin American literature at Rochester Institute of Technology, and so it was my minor. But soon after my first year, after my freshman year, I got an opportunity to study as I did a research program as an international research scholar at a Japanese university called Chiba. So I jumped all the way from Spanish to Japanese. There is no connection between the two. There are some words, like casa is house in Spanish, and it means umbrella in Japanese, but that's very, very rare. But I liked my introductory classes to Japanese. I learned how to write hiragana, katakana, and very basic kanji. But what swooned me was the culture and the, how can I say, like this right of citizenship that every Japanese person possessed. And we were required as international students in my program to respect the culture, and so that made me want to learn the language even more. And then I wound up going back to live in Japan, and I stayed 3 years under the JET program, which stands for Japan Exchange and Teaching. And it was during that time when I became more proficient in Japanese language. I learned from the students that I was teaching English to. And it was a good segue because I met a lot of people from Peru that lived in Japan. So I was able to practice my Spanish and keep that up while learning a brand new, again, different language. And so that's kind of like what I want to lead into. I own a business, and my business is actually founded in my language acquisition because I do business development. And my sweet spot and what I really try to focus on is helping people connect. I'm a connector. And so you do that with the languages, as Tim mentioned, by speaking to them in their mother tongue, and also being, having your, because languages is a skill. So, if you're a graphic designer and you can speak Spanish, or if you are an engineer, you can speak Arabic, or you are a nurse and you can speak French, right? You're adding to that skill and you're making yourself way more marketable. And so that's what happened to me, as a Black woman. People hear Spanish, they're like, oh, that's cool. When I say Japanese, I have your attention. So, and I use it. I use it. But I'm also smart. So I also, it's not, you just can't do that. You have to have everything like in this perfect pot. It's like a stew, right? And so, personally, I have connected with so many people around the world. I'm on my 4th passport, y'all. And I have Oh, thank you. Thank you. And so, and being able to speak to people who are like my grandmother's age. I mean, think about if you're older, you're not, they're not learning another language. So I can connect with them and find out history. I can find out recipes. I can find out, what it was like in their country when they were younger. Something I cannot access online or through an app or any of that. I can talk to them directly. But I can also foster relationships with people who are very proficient in English, and they can teach me jokes and sarcasm and, little things about the culture that, again, is not going to be in a book. And so my personal love with language is definitely crossing over into my business. So it's one and the same for me. And I'm really, really happy that you guys are here and to hear what we have to say about the language component and how it does change your life for the better.
Have you noticed the pattern? It's about bridging, it's about connection, right? If you have multiple skills and you use language as a bridge between those, it's extremely powerful, right? So just as a reminder, I'm expecting some more question cards, so please go ahead, wave if you have a question. There you go. All right. Very good. Because I only have one so far. It's fine, but I like more. All right, so let's briefly touch on the other side of the coin. Language learning is one thing. The intercultural competence, I know, big word, right, is basically you cannot detach from the language learning. You can't just speak a few words but really have no understanding of how languages work. So what I would love our panel to answer very briefly is how did you learn and integrate into the culture that you learned? What were some key moments and some key challenges? Maybe you have a little brief anecdote. All right? Darrah, please go ahead.
Again? Okay. So this is a great question. Intercultural communication is so important. And when I think about this question, I do think about how I kind of prepared myself to move to Korea and before that study abroad in Korea. I'm the type of person that's a little bit type A about these things. I'll go online, do all of the research I can, watch all of the YouTube videos, and then not to mention Korean entertainment has just exploded recently. So I would watch a lot of K-pop videos and K-dramas. I don't know if anyone's fans of those. So I would get into all of that sort of stuff and learn so much about the culture just from that. So I would say definitely start there if you're looking to foster intercultural communication before learning a language or traveling somewhere. And then within that, immersion is really important as well. We talk about this a lot in linguistics and language learning. One of the things that really blew my language learning out of the water was moving to Korea and being there physically and interacting with people, like ordering food at a restaurant or going on the subway. All of these sorts of things really contributed to my intercultural communication. But I will say one of the major challenges with intercultural communication with Korean in Korea specifically would be kind of about how Korea is such a homogeneous country still. I think roughly about 97% of the population in Korea is Korean, ethnically Korean. So not a lot of people are too accustomed to seeing people that don't look like them. So you will get a lot of stares. Sitting at the subway, you'll look up and you'll notice everyone just staring at you intently, like that. It's a little upsetting or a little unsettling, I'll say at first, but it is definitely something that you can get used to. I will say though that it is, I feel that it comes from a place more of curiosity in a country like Korea, like I said, because there's not as many people, there's not as much ethnic diversity. So because Koreans are so diverse, they are so not diverse and so curious, they have a lot of questions for you. They may be shy about asking them at first, but they're very interested in where you're from. And one kind of funny thing that did still happen from time to time while I was over there was I would be asked where I was from, and I would say, "Oh, I'm American." And they'd be like, "Really? You're not from Africa?" Yeah. That is definitely still something that does happen. Definitely an assumption that some Korean people do still have. But once you kind of use that opportunity to educate them, they're like, oh, okay, that makes sense. Like, there are black people everywhere, right? All right.
Trying to be patient for that applause. I apologize. Similar to you, I actually did spend a brief stint of one of my exchanges. Hmm? Oh, sorry. Thank you. I did spend a brief stint in Korea. I did do an exchange, but I didn't keep the language as well as I should have. But I can at least relate to a lot of your experiences. Similarly to Korea, Japan is a homogenous society. And in terms of something that always sticks out to me is I was at a university, and the university is called Soku University, but in Japanese it's Sodaigaku, and there's something called Sodaisai. And Sodaisai is a school festival. And so prior to me visiting this university, prior to me being in Japan for an extended amount of time, you would hear people talk about the university experience as this sort of overcoming, like I did this great accomplishment. And even when I arrived there, they're like, are you going to Sodaisai? Are you going to the festival? And I was like, probably not, just being honest. And a friend of mine said, you know what, you're here. There's an opportunity to experience a different culture. Do it. It was the most intense 2 weeks of my life, fundamentally. A big difference between like school life here at the university level and in Japan is that everything that's done at this festival is student run. There is some there is some oversight in the finance department, but generally from ordering the shirts to making the food to deciding where people go to organizing to designing the flyers, etc., social media, all of that is student led. I'd never seen anything like that. I'd never seen, I think at the time it was about 4 or 5 thousand students at a time all organized in their individual groups. And so for me, just these nuances in conversation, sometimes you never know until you experience it. And that's like my one standout. Outside of that, challenges, as Daria mentioned, in Japan, for me at least, I stuck out for obvious reasons. I don't think I need to repeat what she said. And just being that first person that someone interacts with that's different from a different culture. They will ask you questions about music. They will ask you questions about pop culture, and Japan being kind of closed off in terms of their social media and their culture, who they think are famous in America are often not who we think are famous. But in general, I think that's my experience with cultural fluency.
So, when it comes to culture with French, there are, like I said, a lot of places that speak the language. I think that when you are learning another language, especially one that has, deep ties to a colonial past, it is very important to learn about the different effects that that language has had on a culture and society. It is, I will agree, important to go do even a study abroad, even if it's not living there, being, immersed in that language, but also understanding that with a language like French or like Spanish, where it's spoken in many, many countries, or Arabic even, where it again is spoken in many countries, you want to make sure that you understand the context of that language wherever it is that you are going. People are going to make mistakes. We cannot know everything. And then another thing that I want to point out is that sometimes when you go to another country, that cultural context of understanding, yeah, it's wherever you go, people are typically going to appreciate you at least attempting to speak that language. Sometimes people are not. Sometimes people are just going to be frustrated and say, look, let's just speak English. I would like to speak English. Your whatever language it is isn't as good as my English. And, it's up to you to decide whether you say, no, I'm really here to make this language better, or to accommodate that. And that is something you should also look up. Is it rude to try to continue? Or, how should I address this type of situation? So I do think it's important just to keep in mind that wherever you are going, you should have the context of the language in mind, and to remember that it is almost always going to be more polite to at least try in that language first than to just assume that someone is going to speak English, but also understand that some people are not going to have that patience for someone who's acquiring the language.
What I've learned in foreign language acquisition is that you cannot, I repeat, you cannot separate language and culture. If you try to learn the language and you do not adapt to the culture, being the music or the soccer or the sports, whatever sports it is, the national sport, the food, and the history, then you're going to miss out on a really important part. That's a huge component of a lot of the dialogue that you can have and the things that you would learn. So I would just say very quickly that you have to bridge that language and culture. What I've done, as far as, I'll just highlight Spanish very quickly. I've gone to 3 Mark Anthony concerts. I can sing along with all of his songs. I'm madly in love with that man. And people are like, what, Mark Anthony, Then let's talk about Celia Cruz. She was like the queen of salsa from Cuba. And I love her song, La Negra Tiene Tumbao. And I remember yes, yes. So I remember my Colombian friend, actually when I got back from Japan and she introduced me to that song and she's like, muévete, like that, like do it. And I was still in my little Japanese, like, oh, sumimasen, like that. And but by me learning salsa, merengue, bachata, cumbia, I can go to the Latin clubs and people no, you don't just speak Spanish, like you understand us. And so from that knowledge and feeling, and that's just one example of one culture, you repeat it with every language that you learn. You do it with the people who are sharing the panel here with me. You do it with German. You do it with everything. And you bridge that gap between the culture and the people.
And there's the word again, bridge. See, again, topic. All right, thank you all for your questions. We probably won't be able to answer all of them, but I wanted to just answer a couple on my own real quick. Emily from Tri-Cities asked if there's a nursing program at Georgia State. The answer is yes, and they're in the exhibitor hall, so make sure you talk to them. Then Sarah from Druid Hills asked about study abroad and how that works. The study abroad people are also in the exhibitor hall, so make sure you talk to them. And finally, the Peace Corps, that was Jordan, asked about the Peace Corps. They're also here in the exhibitor hall. So go talk to them. Make sure you ask them all the questions that you have. All right, one word answer. This is a touchy question, but I'm glad somebody asked it. Have some people ever been rude or racist to you for not being native while you're in the country? One word? See if you can do one word. Well, make it 2. Or 3, it's okay.
Well, I don't want to just say yes, but
Okay.
yes. Can I expand?
And then we'll talk about how you dealt with it.
Okay, good.
How about you guys?
Really optimistic and say no.
Okay.
Not really the racism part, but yeah, like I've been in France and French people can be rude.
I guess my response would just be outsider, and I think those of us that have been in Japan would know what that means, and so.
One question that I thought was really interesting, and see, we can also just answer this in just a couple of words. How did you know that the languages you learned was actually the right one for you? Please.
I don't know. I feel guilty some days because I'm someone who works at a refugee resettlement agency, and I'm like, I feel bad for learning French. But then I remember when we have clients walk in and I get a message from the front desk, no one's here who speaks French, and we have clients who just walked in and it seems like they really need help. I can go to the front and I can communicate with someone in a language that they understand and feel comfortable with, and they appreciate that I was able to communicate those needs. So that's when I know it's the right language.
Can you hear me? Okay. My answer is similar to yours. I still don't know, but I can say sort of a philosophical answer in the sense that things just started to fall into place. I hate to say this out loud, but I didn't expect to be at Georgia State. I didn't plan to study abroad. I didn't plan to be involved with the Japan American Society of Georgia, and things just started to line up. And so every day I ask myself, why Japanese? Spanish and even French is more widely spoken in America, but I just keep finding opportunities or doors keep opening, I think is the best answer.
Yes, I would definitely have to say that I agree with Marquis because things did start to kind of line up for me. I also didn't plan to be here or plan to study linguistics at all in high school. I did not even know what that was. um, a little bit of background, I started at Emory as pre-med and I wanted to be a pediatrician. And then after my first year there, I was like, do I really want to just stress myself out with the exams and chemistry and biology for the next decade? Not really. And I always had a passion for language and for travel and discovered the linguistics program. So that felt like the most natural next step. And then I met one of my best friends to this day, who is Korean in that class, and she introduced me to a lot of Korean culture. So I thought, Korean might be a cool language to start with. So I started with it, and it just never ceased to interest me. And yeah, it just felt like the most natural next step.
I wish I had a World Languages Day when I was coming up. You guys are really fortunate. I started with Spanish, so I knew that I've always had an affinity for foreign languages because I just want to talk to everybody. And it's even better for me if I can talk to them in their language. So to me, all of my languages are purposeful, and I learned them with intent of speaking and using them, of utilizing them, but primarily for learning. I learned the language so I can learn more about those places and about the people. So that's my answer. Yes.
And so my personal opinion is whatever feels right. Trust your gut feeling. If you have a language, and we talked about language and culture, right? You cannot separate those two. If there's something about the culture that just speaks to you, then engage in the language. For me, it's Japanese, but I've had a lot going on in my life in the last few years. So my Japanese is extremely rudimentary, but it's something I'm really passionate about. I'm really fascinated with. So that's the language I'm going to be tackling next. So whatever speaks to you, if it feels right, you can make use of it, you find purpose in it, then go ahead, go for it. So one question, and I'm summarizing multiple questions here, is when you learn a language, there's always a point where you just want to give up, throw up your hands. It's frustrating. I don't get this, all these kind of stuff. In just a few words, what has helped you overcome these spots to stay motivated and not give up? In no particular order. Yeah, Erika.
What about the teachers? Hopefully, I will see at least one of them today. I I had very, very supportive teachers where I felt like I could be honest. I stayed for office hours or I studied some French at Alliance Française, but the majority of my French was studied here with the teachers here and getting support from teachers here at Georgia State. And stay after and talk to people and express what's going on because this is a shared experience and it's not unique to one language. I definitely had days where I was like, am I making the right decision? Is this the right major? I'm just not seeming to understand this tense that we don't use in English that is used in French. And guess what? I still have troubles with it sometimes, but I still am a Francophone person. I speak French. And it was the support of the people around me. So definitely make sure that when you're learning a language that you network with other people, that you speak to people in your class, and that you also try to make a connection with your teachers. They understand. If your teacher is here in the US teaching you, they speak English and they speak another language. So guess what? They know how tough it is to acquire a second language.
I'd like to piggyback on something that you just said. You guys have the privilege of being here in Atlanta. Almost any language that you can think about just off the top of your head, there's a community here for it. So you should utilize that. I mean, not only with the organizations, but like groups, student programs. You take advantage of that because you're not in the middle of nowhere where there's no other population. And so I think with that being said, just utilize that.
I think you said that beautifully, Erika. I'm just going to pull it back a little bit and just say they don't necessarily have to be your classmates. They don't necessarily have to be your teachers. I've always found moments in my life, even recently, where I'm like, why am I here? I want to give up. Just having a community around you, good friends, family members that trust you and believe in you, that's what I've always done, but still expanding.
It's all about your people and your support mechanism, right? And ask them to hold you accountable, right? When you're learning something and you're kind of starting to give up, you just, I don't know, a sibling, parents, friends, whatever, just tell us like, hey, nudge me and give me a little kick of the bum if I'm ever slacking off. So something. I have perhaps the last question here, but I really like this one. This is from probably Jamia or Benjamin or both from Banneker High School. What has been the most unexpected door that has opened up since learning a language? What gave your life a twist and a turn that you didn't see coming? So that was one of those pivotal moments, those pivotal decisions that you didn't really expect. See, they're thinking now. That's why I like that question because it makes people think. Anybody?
Directly with refugees. I always wanted to do something to kind of make a make the world a little bit better than when I came in. So I would say working with refugees, I didn't. It's a very competitive internship program. It's a competitive place to work, and NGOs can be difficult to get into, but they are not impossible. I really want to emphasize, not impossible. But I thought that I would be in a different country, maybe having to do something that didn't have anything to do with political science, but maybe I'd get to be using French, maybe. And this is, I didn't expect it to happen, but it's definitely like a dream come true.
So for me, uh, phenomenal question. I don't know exactly who asked that phenomenal question. It's going to be a little different. Um, through Japanese and through my study abroad, I actually got the opportunity to tutor students on their language journey. Japanese students specifically learning English and then coming back with that experience and tutoring Japanese students here. I'm sorry, correct. English students learning Japanese at GSU. And what I found is that I really, really do find some semblance of what's the word I'm looking for? I get joy. I get this joyous feeling of watching somebody else succeed. And to say all that to say that now I consider possibly being a teacher. And so just having these opportunities can kind of expand your mind and show or having life reveal itself to you, I think is my answer.
Really say that one door that kind of opened for me professionally was also with teaching and tutoring. As I said before, I spent the last 2 years teaching English at an institution, at a school or academy in Korea. So because I spoke Korean, a lot of my students' parents that I would meet and talk to at parent-teacher conferences and stuff, they would ask like, "Oh, could you please tutor my student?" privately outside of school. I'll pay you whatever you want. And so I was able to kind of on the side have a couple of students that I would tutor because I did speak Korean and I was one of the only foreign teachers at the school that did. I was able to explain tough concepts to them in their native language as well. So.
And I'm going to add to that because the teaching and tutoring is something that I'm experiencing because I actually signed up earlier this year to volunteer as an English instructor slash tutor for Ukrainians in Ukraine who want to learn English. So I was matched with a wonderful young guy, father of a little boy and a lovely wife. And so I've been meeting with him almost once a week. And we have already gotten an invitation to come to Ukraine as soon as the war is over and all these things. So we're just really excited. So it's a wonderful thing. So the last couple of minutes that we have, a lot of you wanted to or ask about maybe some resources or some tips, some tricks, some things that helped you learn the language. And maybe there's a couple of things that come to mind that you can mention, you can name that maybe our audience can write down just a few things that they can, some resources.
If you guys Google NPR StoryCorps, there's a story or interview that I did on NPR News regarding my practicing Spanish on the MARTA trains. And so I use that as an example on how I have, I'll see somebody, let's say they're Japanese, and then I just go and introduce myself and just strike up a conversation. It's a little bit unorthodox because, you're a little bit you're imposing, they don't know you, but at the end, I'm learning a new vocabulary. They're having an exchange with a foreigner. And I don't know, maybe you make a friend at the end of the day.
Well, one resource that I did use a lot specifically for Korean, if anyone's interested, is called Talk to Me in Korean. It's this YouTube channel and also a website, I believe. They have a lot of really good lessons there and also a set of textbooks as well if you want to check those out. But for languages broadly, I would definitely say doing things that you find fun and integrating into that. Language learning is very important. So one thing that I did was I downloaded this extension on my Google Chrome, which is called Language Reactor or something like that. I forgot the name, but if you just search Netflix language extension, if you have that extension, you can watch any show, any movie on Netflix and have two sets of subtitles running simultaneously. And then if you roll over with your mouse on any individual word that you're not sure of, it will give you like the dictionary entry to it. So definitely look into that. Learning a language while watching your favorite TV show is the best thing.
Just going off of that, I do recommend if you're going to watch things, there's plenty of languages on Netflix. Be careful about things that might be translated into whatever that language is, because the translation might be a little weird. So if you find something that's like from that actual country or language, and then I would also urge you to only use subtitles in the language that you are trying to learn, because if you have English subtitles, you'll be translating between English and the language in your head, and that's not really going to help with the acquisition.
I'll try to be really quick. If you want to study kanji, Wanikani, it's an app slash website. There's another website in terms of if you want to start learning Japanese. It's Tofugu. It's just tofu with GU at the end of it. And as mentioned on this panel as well, go out into your community. For most of the languages that we're even displaying on this this panel, there's some organization, there are people out there, and that's end it.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Guys, our time is up, unfortunately. If I could keep you here for another 30 seconds, Aiyana would love to take a selfie with you all in the background. Is that all right? All right, come on. Let's do it real quick. All right. All right. Yeah, there you go. Okay. 1, 2, 3. Okay, now everybody, when she says 1, 2, 3, throw up your hands and say, World Language Day, okay? Okay. 1, 2, 3. Fantastic. You guys have been amazing. Have fun. Thank you so much.